The traditional turn-based RPG was founded and cemented into gaming culture with Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest. It quickly spawned its own genre and was made ever more popular, especially thanks to the massively popular Pokemon franchise. Many wonderful games were made with this idea in mind, and using the creative style from previous RPGs, they mixed it with their own fantastic system, and some of them were lauded as the best games ever made. Final Fantasy 6 and 7, Chrono Trigger, Golden Sun, the Persona series, Pokemon, and Dragon Quest, even bleeding into the World of Warcraft series, such huge games that came from the turn-based battle system. I would wager there are thousands of turn-based RPGs. Massive, sprawling games where, to be fair, if you boil down the mechanics of them, they are literally a turn-based battle with monsters where you select the type of attack you do until the enemy's health ticks down to 0. Taking time between battles to improve stats and lead to more powerful attacks. It's simple but effective. It's this power fantasy where you feel like you are growing stronger each time. However, there is a problem with RPGs that doesn't get addressed very often. People love the series' stories, worlds and characters so much they're willing to overlook the huge time consumption and repetitive task that is the turn-based battle system. Most RPGs do tend to feel, well, samey and lacking interest outside of boss battles, boiling down to just finding the best strategy for defeating the enemy. Usually, and if we're honest, mashing the attack option until the enemy is defeated. Quickest and easiest method. The Final Fantasy games, while fun to play, often do boil down to press attack until super meter is full, then do super. Or do spell which is most powerful or useful until the enemy is dead. It's just a series of selecting commands and watching the numbers pop up. There isn't really any interesting player input or engagement. It does tend to leave battles feeling a lot less memorable, as they are just a part of the level grind before a more thematically resonant or gameplay heavy boss battle. But then along came Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga. Superstar Saga is developed by Alpha Dream, which was heavily inspired by the original Paper Mario and Super Mario RPG games, along with their previous game, Tomato Adventure. The previous Mario RPGs established a tone and style for each of the games, and incorporated turn-based battles where small button inputs added bonuses to the skilled players who could pull them off. Tomato Adventure had a turn-based battle system, where to land attacks, the player had to complete a small minigame called Gimmicks in order to increase the damage output, and a risk-reward system. More difficult minigames would mean more damage, but greater risk of failing and starting over the minigame. It clearly resembles Mario & Luigi in a few ways. There are enemies on the overworld that are scattered around, there are puzzles to overcome in a wacky and fun world, and the damage output is dictated by small player inputs. The difference with Mario & Luigi is that during the enemy attack phase, you just take straight damage, whereas in Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga, this is certainly not the case. The real magic of Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga isn't down to its charming world or its interesting characters or its humorous dialogue. It's in fact down to its marvellous battle system. Being at heart another turn-based battle system where you take turns to attack and then receive damage from enemies, this system is more about integrating the player input into every part of the process, and it really makes every encounter much more fun and much more engaging. Not just when attacking enemies. When you jump on them, you deal damage, but pressing the button again at the right time gives you extra damage to the enemies. This was done in Super Mario RPG and Paper Mario, but this game greatly expands upon it. It's much more clearly defined, where if you time your strikes correctly with the jump, hammer or hand, you will receive a bonus. This is fantastic, as it grabs hold of the player and it doesn't let them zone out during battles where you just mash the A button until the enemy is dead. It makes you engage in the actual battle itself. The genius and the real top-notch stuff is when it comes down to the receiving damage part. Usually in RPGs it's just but, you've taken the damage. Whatever, what can you do? Sometimes you can put up a barrier that stops damage, oh well, you're going to receive damage anyway. From what would usually just be you take damage, instead you focus on the fact that you can avoid damage or even counterattack with perfectly timed jumps or swings of the hammer. It makes you engage with every single part of the battle and gives you player agency. It now means you're actively invested in all facets of the normal battle system, and the more skilled you are, the better you will do and the less damage you'll receive. I think that's way more fun relying on your own skill instead of just being a master of spreadsheets. This game does something else spectacularly as well, and that is mapping Mario and Luigi to separate A and B buttons. So moving through the overworld requires the use of both buttons to make both of the bros jump and explore. This is carried over into the battle system, where every attack, dodge, or input selection is tied to each of the buttons specifically for each of the bros. So battle actions are now linked to the overworld movements and the abilities you use outside of battles, which is so perfect and organic I can't even tell you how genius that is. Your upgrades and movements and abilities all add changes to how you move, swing hammers, or use your fucking hands in using the A and B buttons. And so do the moves you do during battle. You really feel like you're learning and upgrading as you go through in a way that completely makes sense from a gameplay perspective, and also totally fits with the Mario Bros. Usually in traditional RPGs, using a skill or a special move will trigger an attack with flashy animation and then that's it, end of the thing. Some RPGs have dabbled in player inputs before, like Sabin's moves in Final Fantasy VI, which I love by the way, but keeping with the teamwork theme of the game and the mechanic system they've set out, all of the skills involve teamwork and the use of the A and B buttons. They're called bro moves and are essentially little QuickTime events. Now I know people always moan about QuickTime events, but when used correctly, they can enlighten a game's experience. It's not just like, oh, punch the rock, punch the fucking rock. It's like, they can sometimes enhance the gameplay instead of just being a boring button press. By pressing A and B correctly in the QuickTime event, you can do a much more flashy and entertaining move, which thematically makes the bros use their teamwork to do a much bigger and more powerful move. They add engagement to the combat, they reward the skill, and they're super fun to do. There's nothing not to like. I love dodging enemy attacks in this game. It's the thing I remember most, more than anything. All of the enemies are goofy and have fun, crazy Mario designs, but in their own style, and they all have telegraphs based on which bro they're going to attack. So an observant player has a better idea of who will be attacked, and you can prepare for the unique attack that the enemy will do. Every enemy feels unique and poses a different challenge to overcome. That's the same for bosses. They're fast-paced battles that rely on player skill and agency instead of number crunching. While you can equip better items and stat build like most RPGs, it is conceivable you can get through most of the game and most enemy encounters with pure skill alone. The experience points and the equipment now act mainly as a time save and a sense of power escalation instead of being essential. It also helps that Superstar Saga keeps all of the attack damage and health and everything quite low down, so it's quite easy to grasp and easy to manage. Instead of doing this, 5,000 fucking damage, whatever, in Final Fantasy, it's very minimal, it's very comprehensible, and it's small, and it's simple, and it's great. There's nothing complex, anybody can do this, but it's fun no matter what skill level you are. For a small experiment, I thought I'd compare one of the battle systems from probably the most popular RPG of all time, Final Fantasy VII, and Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga. I compared the amount of proper inputs that you do, impactful and meaningful inputs, the presses of the A and B button to select an attack, select which enemy to attack, and select how to attack it, or to do something that actually means something to the game. Final Fantasy VII actually has a very good battle system using the ATB timer, where it will slowly charge up over the courses of the turns, and you can just quickly attack and attack and attack when you get loads of party members, and you do feel it is satisfying because you never feel like there's a dull moment and it's always like doing something cool. But to be fair, the difference is quite stark in that Mario & Luigi has 28 button presses in the same amount of time and Final Fantasy VII has 17. And if you compare that to a lot of RPGs, where I think Final Fantasy VII is probably one of the faster ones, well, you know, I guess that just speaks volumes of Mario & Luigi's battle system. Using the bros outside of battles is also a breath of fresh air. In my recent review of Octopath Traveler, I criticised the fact that everything outside of the battles felt like a linear path without anything challenging or interesting, beside the odd chest here and there. Mario & Luigi is the complete opposite. The first major plus is a lack of random enemy encounters. All of the enemies you can fight on the battlefield are arranged sometimes like platforming obstacles in a standard Mario game, albeit not as tricky due to the limitations of the movement, but it still gives this sense of personality and it clearly adheres to the previous Mario games in a thematically working way. It gives you battles you can avoid if you're good at platforming, and along with interesting platforming puzzles and different unique ways to use the different movesets on the outside, which I love it. I absolutely love it. It's so entertaining, and you never feel bored. There's always something new. It feels a bit like a Metroidvania, or well, probably closer to a Zelda dungeon. Most areas will have an openish area where you can go through and explore places with enemies dotted around, where there are some places locked off. When eventually you get to the mini-boss of the area, you'll beat them and you'll get a new skill, such as hitting bros with the hammers. You use the skills that you've just learnt, you go through, open up the areas you've seen before, and then you get to the boss and you beat the boss. It's great. It's design old as time, but it works. It works so well. The only abilities you really get is the ability to jump as a pair, swing a hammer, and eventually use hand magic, which is fire and electricity. Well, in most bog standard RPGs, that would just be it. You can break blocks, you can jump over obstacles, and you can light torches on fire. This game is so much more, as it gives you the ability to recontextualize these moves based on who's in front of the bro pairing and who swings their hammer or uses their hand or uses their jump special. All of the abilities are always mapped to the A and B buttons, while switching which abilities they are will rely on L and start. So that's 4 buttons, but so many options you have. The player at front can jump, swing a hammer, and light the torches. The player behind can initiate a different move based on if they're using their special jump move, like Luigi's jump higher, if they swing a hammer and they make Mario shrink, or if they fucking electrocute Mario and make him stand and strafe. And even then you can swap it over so that Mario's doing these things, Luigi buries underground, you can do a spin move to hover over areas, and you can light fire under Luigi's arse and you run super fast and break through obstacles. I love it. It's thematically exactly the same mechanically in a battle as it is on the Overworld, and it also feels natural for Mario and Luigi to have such wacky funny moves. It adds more comedic value to this already funny game, and I can't gush enough about how well designed this game is. But I hear some people complain about the game and the controls based on how confusing they can be with so many abilities being mapped to just 2 buttons and the order that the team is. But I love how simple and clearly defined the options are, and I'm not sure there are clearer ways that you could have laid out these options without sacrificing that gameplay theme throughout of having everything dependent on both the A and B buttons. Mario & Luigi is probably the best game on the Game Boy Advance. That doesn't rhyme with smother me! The care and craft that went into such a unique battle system is so great. It engages players into each battle and makes everything feel just fun. I haven't seen an RPG system get even close to it until Undertale. Not only that, but the world they created with the Bean Kingdom is such a love letter to previous Mario games, but it's so colourful and strange and bizarre and fits with the writing in that it's super funny. You owe it to yourself to play Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga. It's a masterpiece.